Hi, welcome to this week's Creative Healing Conversation. And you're being hosted by our page, The 5-Element Creative Healing Process, Creating Heals. And our topic this week is on releasing, renewing, and rebirthing. So it's releasing energy that isn't working in order so that we may use that renewed energy toward an intention, and that's sort of a rebirth of ourselves. We're constantly renewing and rebirthing ourselves, aren't we? We're changing what isn't working into what is working. And that's a little mini rebirth of some sorts. And part of our conversation today is also going to be about rewriting your story, particularly the part of the story that starts where you are now and goes to an ending that you're looking to really manifest and have happen in your life. So our three topics or keys that we're going to talk about in our time together is one is what needs to be composted, basically, the part that needs to be released. So we'll kind of break all that down. And the second part is how to rewire our nervous system. And the third part is using the creative healing process as a form of composting our crap. That's actually the quickest way I can say it, the least wordy way, because as you know, I can be a little wordy. So anyway, we're going to talk about what that actually means. The composting of the crap is basically how to use what we're looking to release as a source of renewal for what we're looking to birth. And that's a very specific process, and it does take practice. So I know that the first times I did, and even now when it's on a new topic, when I do those 3 steps, release, to renew, to rebirth, it's really awkward and I trip over myself. But the key is I don't berate myself for that. I just get back up and I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and it becomes easier to do, and it becomes more familiar and less scary, and just you build a muscle around it. So let's go to that first point. So what is it we want to release? Well, for most of us as human beings, there's a pool of crap that have various words that I'll put forward, and you'll recognize them, around things that are stopping us, basically. So it's either our fears, our limiting beliefs. Sometimes that looks like worry. It can look like overwhelm. It can look like feeling stuck. It can look like anxiety. It can look like depression. It can look like the feeling of not having hope, feeling a little bit in despair. That's the word I was looking for. So that is really our pool. And all of those signals are trying to get our attention that there's something to be transformed. And you wouldn't be feeling fear or worry or anxiety or despair or overwhelm or pain. Pain is another one, actually. Energy lands last in the physical. So when we have a physical pain, then that is really a message of intelligence from our system that has tried other ways to get our attention, but we maybe didn't hear, or we decided to press the snooze button. And so the message had to get louder and louder. And if it's landed in the physical, if it's in your body as pain, then that's a louder message and worth listening to. So all of those, that's just your pool. That's the end. Oh, I know where I was going with that, is that if it's getting your attention and you now have conscious awareness of it, it is time to be released. It is ready to be released. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in your conscious awareness. Anything that's in your conscious awareness in the form of pain, anxiety, fear, worry, overwhelm, all the things that we've already said, then it is ready to be released, and that you are ready to release it. It may feel scary, but it wouldn't be in your awareness if you weren't ready. Your higher wisdom knows when you're ready. Your mind does not. That's our next key or topic for the day. But if it wasn't ready to be released, you wouldn't be aware of it. So the first thing to do is to accept that it's in your presence and that it's been brought to your awareness. Accept it all you have to do is accept it in a non-judgmental way. So you'll find your ways for that. But if you're criticizing the fact that it's there, if you're judging yourself for the fact that it's there, if you're, beating yourself up because you constantly feel fear around a particular topic, or you're so tired and over it in terms of a particular pain, all of that, all of the judgment, criticism, berating, self-berating, locks the energy in. When you're able to make a conscious choice to say, okay, here you are, you've got my attention, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, we're going to go somewhere from here together. That's a little bit different. There's an opening in that for you to transform the energy. The self-criticism and the self-judgment has no opening for transformation. So that's the very first key point to know, is that you're looking to create an opening. And don't worry that your acceptance of being aware of it, or your acknowledgement of it, is going to perpetuate it and keep it there. It's the opposite exactly. Actually, it's the opposite of that. It's the judgment that actually keeps it perpetuated, and the mind actually is a little upside down on that. So when I say mind, let's take ourselves to the second point. I'm talking about our ego mind, our lower mind that is disconnected from higher wisdom. That part of us, the only purpose to that part of us is to keep us safe. And so we have these various brain tracks in our brain, and they're all very well traveled. You know this well. And this is all based on research out of neuroscience. Salk Institute is very near, and I always go to every workshop or lecture that I can of theirs, especially on the newer understandings of rewiring our brain, because it's fascinating. Most people do not believe they can rewire their brain, and yet it's actually not that difficult. And I do teaching on that, and it's in my programs because it's so important if we're going to walk ourselves out of a groove that has been well traveled. Let's just say there's a fear or a worry groove that is very well traveled in your brain. It's going to be very hard to change what you're wanting to do, a habit or even an addiction, or move yourself past a block from where you are currently to where you want to be. If you keep traveling that particular track in your brain, you have to actually create a different track in your brain to travel. And while that feels frightening and scary, it's actually very safe. It's the least scary option. Staying in a groove or a track in your brain that is an outmoded track and is no longer serving you is actually less safe than creating a new brain track. So these are the kinds of things you have to tell yourself. These are the kinds of things I have to tell myself. Sweetie, it's okay. This is the opposite of self-criticism and self-judgment, right? It's okay. We're going to create a new path. It's going to be safe. We're going to take it one step at a time. I'll be with you every step of the way. You can stay in your old track if you want and just watch for a while, but I'm going to take this path, and I promise you it's going to be okay. And then soon you'll see that it's actually okay, and you'll probably want to come and join me because it's going to be more fun on this path. And it sounds silly, it really does, but it works. And so really you're just talking the scared part of you off the ledge so that you aren't being sabotaged by taking your next step on a path or on a track or the creation of a track that is actually going to walk you towards what you want, rather than continue to spin your wheels and waste your energy. I mean, over the age of 40, we don't have extra energy to waste anymore. This is how I learned all this, actually. I'm 56, so, for the last 16 years, I've been figuring out that I don't have reserves to waste. I don't have extra energy to waste. So I have had to figure out how to be very efficient in the use of my energy, right? So you may know that we we are all wired with an autonomic nervous system. And that just autonomic means it runs by automation, right? You don't have to think about digesting your food or beating your heart or pumping your blood, or even creating a stress response for that matter, because it just happens so automatically. The stress response piece is interesting, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. So there's two branches of our autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight, or the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic, which is the calming branch. This is where a body heals. So this is why research can provide clear outcomes for meditation, creative healing processes, acupuncture, deep breathing. I already said meditation, all yoga, all of those things are calming, and they move our system, they move our nervous system into the parasympathetic, or the calming branch. In that branch, our body has access to healing, right? So it can actually repair tissue, renew cells, all the things that need to happen for you to be healthy, vital, flourishing, and feeling like you are healthy and having a sense of well-being. Most of us, this is the kicker, most of us are living in the sympathetic branch of our nervous system in varying degrees all day long. So what tends to happen is we're constantly triggering a stress response. We're constantly kicking ourselves into a stress response, whether it's low grade, medium grade, or high grade. It's the high grade ones that kick off anxiety attacks, right? So, the key is to recognize yourself along this spectrum and notice when you're ready to fight or flee or freeze. Those are actually the three responses in a strong stress response: fight, flight, and freeze. Freeze, for example, is where we can't lose weight. If we're constantly in a stress response and we tend to move in whatever it is that is most triggering for us throughout the day, day after day, week after week, month after month, right? This all adds up in a human body and builds a momentum, very strong momentum. If we're constantly in the mode of freeze, then it's going to be very difficult for you to lose weight if that's one of the things that you'd like to do. And I don't know very many women over the age of 40 who don't want to lose a couple extra pounds, myself included. So the key is to recognize this and to engage measures that teach your brain how to bring itself, you're consciously doing this by will, how to bring yourself into the parasympathetic branch and create brain tracks that are actually walking you towards the things that are valuable to you, the things that are important. And there's a few things that I've noticed over the years that are important to every human being. And that is feeling well, feeling healthy in your body, feeling at ease in your system, and the capacity to have a sense of expression, because we're all here to express ourselves. And also a feeling of having access to abundance and good and plenty. I've used those words before in our creative healing conversations. A connection to love, and also a feeling of being enough. We need to connect into this center point that teaches us that we're enough. And most of us don't have access to that. And so all of those things are ways to rewire your brain. And while I love music, by the way, for changing our brain waves, and I love a lot of the ones that are binaural, and they actually put our brain waves in specific patterns. Those are really good, and I like them, and you can look those up online. And I would say that they're training wheels, because you need to be able to do this yourself. We can't run to our headphones and put on the music every time we're losing our grip. We have to train ourselves, and it's highly possible. The music is our training wheels, right? They teach us what it feels like to be in our mind, body, and life with that sense of calm and ease and enoughness, and that feeling of centeredness, so that we can do it anytime, anywhere. And I know that it's possible because I'll tell you my story at some point, but I used to be a very anxious person, very overwhelmed, feeling of not enough in every area of my life. And that is not my experience anymore, because I've done this work. And as I've already said, it's creative healing processes that literally kicked the ball over the goal line. You know, all the other stuff I tried was helpful, but it never got me over the goal line, so to speak. And so I am now all about cutting to the chase and getting over the goal line, because why waste time? You know, while there's no rush, there's no time to waste either. And so that's, you know, I like that cutting to the chase part. And I also like that, you know, you don't have to beat pillows and sit in talk therapy for decades. And no offense to therapists and to therapy, my husband's a psychologist, so I've just personally discovered that I like color, and I like it to be a little more fun, and I like cutting to the chase and moving the energy that I can't even get to talk about, right? That's where deep transformation happens, deep and lasting transformation. I asked that question about 5 or 6 years ago. I was so frustrated, and I said to Spirit, I said, listen, show me the ways that deep and lasting transformation are possible. And I was shown in spades, and have experienced it in my life, experienced in facilitating it with others. And that's the purpose of my time together with you in these conversations, is to lead you and walk you closer and closer to that deep and lasting transformation. And I say closer and closer because I can't do it in 20 minutes. I can't do it in 30 minutes. So I'm trying to string together, you know, crumbs, so to speak, that will lead you down the path toward that. So our third point is the creative healing process as a form of composting. So if you're here, let's say you're here at point A, and this is not where you want to be. This is where, you know, your stuff isn't working, and you want to go to point B, and this is your intention. This is what you really want to have. This is what you're aching for. This is your dream, your desire, the thing you want to be, who you want to be. So let's just, you can use any example you want, but let's use that example of anxiety and pain, just because, I don't know, it's right there. So let's say you have pain, and you're anxious, and you have a lot of worry. All that stuff is the same, right? And you want a sense of ease, and you want a sense of flow, and you want a sense of being pain-free. You want to feel buoyant and vital in your body. And that could also mean in any place in your life. It can be in an emotional experience. You want flow in an emotional experience versus tension and tightness and anxiousness and worry. So, you know, we're just using anxiety and pain as a sort of a broad brushstroke for any area of your life, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual. So, okay, you're here and you want to be here. So there's this gap in between, right? There's this big gorge. And this is generally, for almost everybody, the stuff that is asking to be transformed. These are our fears and our limiting beliefs. And you may or may not know them clearly. Some of them you've probably learned over the years. You've mined enough of your own transformational journey that you have understood a few things. But even in understanding a few of those things, it doesn't seem to be getting you over the gorge, right? The bridge building, this is what I love, the creative healing processes build a bridge for you so that you can go from point A to point B. And how delicious is that? And it, you know, again, not to be repetitive, but I will, because I love this part, is that it does it in a way that's very enjoyable, colorful, light-hearted, spirit-filled, guided by your higher wisdom, right? So you don't have to figure it all out in your small mind, because trust me, if you're a small mind, your ego mind, your lower mind could have figured all this out, it would have done it by now. It does not know how. It will never know how. That's not its job. It's a logical tool and nothing more. It cannot figure out the big picture of your life for you in those ways. So you must be willing to give the reins to your heart and to your spirit to show you and guide you and lead the way. And this is what we're talking about doing in creative healing processes. So one of the reasons I have these tools in my hand. So it could be a paintbrush, it could be a pencil, it can be a pen, it can be any, you know, element that will cause something to be created on a blank piece of paper. This is just a fun little multicolor pencil I have that I like to use sometimes. So you can pick any one of these, and you're going to start writing. This is actually going to be a little bit of homework for you, and I'd love for you to post how it goes for you. So you're going to write down This is where I feel like I currently am on one side of the page. On the other side of the page, this is where I'd really love to be. And then make an arc or an arch or a bridge or whatever. Just connect the two and start writing down what you feel are the things that are not allowing you to walk over that bridge. And that's all you're going to do for now. And you're going to practice being aware that this is something that is true for you. It's true that you have a fear about X, Y, and Z. Don't judge it. Don't criticize it. Don't berate yourself for it. Just be aware of it and find a way to say, okay, here you are. You're right here. You're on paper. And by the way, writing all this stuff down is already moving energy for you. So do not do this in your head. That's part of the problem. You can't do this in your head. You have to move the energy out, preferably through an implement that you use through your own hand, right? Pick an implement, even if it's just a pencil. That research shows that the act of moving what's in the thoughts in your mind through your arm, through a writing implement, and delivering it onto something that will receive the words that you're writing, that in and of itself, it's why journaling is really powerful, and ideally written journaling, because it moves energy. So that alone starts creating a flow. It also starts helping you identify what's really swirling around in that pool of your head, in that pool of confusion for most of us. And it starts helping us tease out what's true and what's not true, so that we can become clear about our steps. And those steps then become the way we walk ourselves over the bridge from point A to point B. Okay? So, and that's, this whole thing, this middle ground, this is the compost. This is what I mean by, it's basically your crap, and we're going to start composting that crap so that it becomes a different form of energy, just like in regular composting for gardeners that know this. All of that stuff starts transforming and becoming what's called black gold, which is a dirt that grows incredibly beautiful plants, incredibly viable plants. Okay? And you're going to be the plant. You're the viable plant. You're the vital blossom, so to speak. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to make sure I do. Oh, and the point of all of this is because you'll be able to use this energy as it's transforming to have a clearer view. It's hard when you're at point A, which is where you don't want to be, or where, I don't know which side I was doing this on, but anyway, if this is where you are and this is where you do not want to be, it is really kind of hard to have a clear picture of how to get over to where you want to be. So when you mark where you want to be and you start arcing the bridge and you start identifying what you think might be in your way, and then we'll do a creative healing process, but not today. Then it becomes clearer to you. Things start becoming more clear as you sort of can lift up a little bit and have a better vision, and you can pierce through the appearances and see that there is a step. There is a step-by-step pathway here, and this is part of rewiring your brain. So this all sort of plays together. So that is what I would offer you to take on as your creativity clue for the week, because the clue ends up being what you discover about yourself when you're willing to just take 5 or 10 minutes and just drop this stuff down on a piece of paper. I like to do it in color, so that's why I use colored pens. You can do it with a pencil, you can do it with a pen, you can do it with anything you choose. I just happen to like color. It makes it more, I don't know, I feel more inspired to do it. It feels more playful rather than like homework assignment. Our mind really prefers to be playful rather than having to do work. That's a key thing to know about your mind. And in next week's Creative Healing Conversation, we're going to talk about community, courage, creativity, and color. I already did, but I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of the vibration of light in color form that changes our own energy system for the positive. There's each of those 5 elements that we've touched on over our last conversations have a color that is most associated to it based on frequency, because everything can be measured by frequency. And so you can start using color to change your own organ function. You can start using color to change the way you think. You can start using color to change the way you tell stories to yourself, right? So what we'll eventually end up doing is changing the stories that you've been telling, the old brain tracks, because if you keep walking that track, you can only tell that story. If you change the track and the story and do a creative healing process at the same time, then you start changing the energy, and that's where you start feeling in your being the transformation happening. And that's what I want you to learn for yourself, because once you have that, you have it for life, and you can manifest anything. You can create anything that's important to you. You can shift things that present themselves to you anytime and not feel like you're sort of frozen in fear, or you're terrorized by your own energy. So that is the way we are going to roll with this. I also want to remind you to go ahead and get your free gift. It's a URL that I will have in this conversation, a link. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'm happy to respond to whatever questions you may have. As each conversation continues, they get a little bit more internal. They're less about the external, and they're more about you and what's going on inside. So you may have questions about that. So I want you to pop those questions in the comments, and I will read them and get back to you as soon as I can. Also, feel free to share these videos with any of your family or friends that you care about, that you feel like they would be helpful for. The videos would be helpful for them. On that happy note, I will see you next week in our conversation about community, courage, creativity, and color. Until then, have a lovely week.